listening to the New Frontier Network with Chris Iverson and Victor Vigiani.
Welcome to NFN, the New Frontier Network, where we explore the new frontiers of phenomenology, ufology, and exopolitics. Today's broadcast will be dedicated to someone we've lost just in the last few weeks to the unfortunate pandemic of COVID across the world. We'd like to remember Angelia Joiner, her contributions, her friendship, her steady influence, her undying research and question and interviews that went along with particularly the Stephenville sightings that occurred 10 to 15 years ago. But she got to be a very close friend and a participant, a supporter for us. And we mourn her passing and wish her well in the beyond, as the universe is now better off for where she is. So with that, we'd like to jump into today's webcast and welcome everybody. We have with us our normal group, almost normal group of correspondents and panelists. With me today, he is Victor Vigiani, and Victor is co-hosting with me. I am
Chris Iverson, and welcome, Chris, as co-host. Great to have you here.
It's wonderful to be back here with everybody. We'll do a quick run through our crew with us today. We have from Peru and Miami joining me, Giorgio Pacenza. From Portugal, we have Francisco Miral Correa. From the UK joining us today, we have Lee Nicholson sitting in for Manuel Lameroy. We also have with us from Canada, Chrissy Newton, just down the block from Victor, who is also in the Toronto area.
Thanks a lot, Chris. James Fox was born in England and raised in New York and California. He began his journalism career early in his life as an assistant to his father, writer Charles Fox. Together, they traveled on many magazine assignments, from Rolling Stone, Car and Driver, to Sports Illustrated. James finished and sold his first documentary to Discovery by the time he was 28 years old. James has made frequent appearances on The Larry King Show, Coast to Coast AM, Nightline, Dateline, and Anderson Cooper. Among his films on UFOs are Out of the Blue, UFOs, 50 Years of Denial, and I Know What I Saw. And also his most recent and highly acclaimed film, Phenomenon. James Fox, welcome to the New Frontier Network.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I was profoundly saddened by Angelia Joiner's passing. I was in touch with her daily, and never did I dawn on me that she wasn't going to make it. I just thought she was too young. She's too healthy. Devastated. And but I had a funny little story about the Stephenville sighting, because I just happened to be, it's in the film I Know What I Saw, but I happened to be filming some pickup shots, interviews in Phoenix. And I had a whole camera crew with me. And it was late 2008. And I was actually, we had tickets. The whole team was going to fly to O'Hare and cover the O'Hare airport incident from United Airlines over at terminal, I think it was 17. And I was in touch with some people. Leslie Kane was putting me in touch with some people, witnesses from United Airlines that were extremely reluctant to go on camera, but we were going to try anyway. And I got a phone call literally on the way to the airport, massive sighting in Stephenville, Texas. We canceled our trip to Chicago and we flew to Texas. I mean, we literally landed, I think the next morning or something. We happened to have the whole camera crew ready to go. And I'll never forget the night before we did some publicity on CNN, Larry King, and so when we arrived, the town had seen us on television, and so we were kind of with a warm welcome. And I'll never forget meeting Angelia. I always mispronounce her name. I'm sorry, Angelia Joiner. She asked me, thinking I was some sort of expert, hey, how is it possible, and this is all on camera, how is it possible that this ship could be so huge and move so quickly and not make any sound and not disturb the air at all? And I sat there and I went, I have no idea. And we both roared with laughter together. It was such a beautiful moment of levity, and and we bonded at that moment in time. And she's just, I'm just devastated about her passing. So I'm really glad that you guys are dedicating the show to her.
The work that you've done here in the last several years has been amazing, and the progression in your we'll call it UFO documentaries, although we're more into the UAP, as we are much better aware today that these are not necessarily flying, unless you include flying through the water and other particular bits and pieces of the atmosphere and earth that we deal with these phenomena in. But it's been an amazing journey to see your films. And as we were chatting, it strikes me and strikes us that the approach that you've been able to take and the seriousness that it's dealt and the witnesses that you bring forth in the films and how they're presented in the films gives and lends a sense of credibility to the subject matter, something that has always been sorely lacking. So it is much appreciated that you're able to take that approach, and everybody, and us included, who have been around for a long time, really appreciate that as well. Interested to find out from you, though, what was your introduction to this? And you mentioned, somebody else we lost recently was Stanton Friedman. And I remember him from way back as I was a kid in Michigan at the time that the infamous interviews were giving out at the time regarding swamp gas and everything. And J. Allen Hynek and Stanton Friedman became very important names, even as I was a little kid, to follow along with them. But what sent you down this path to begin with, so that you obviously have an intense interest in the subject matter, and you continue to focus upon it and doing a wonderful job of presenting it to the world?
Well, thank you. I feel like that is the one element that it matters most. And even I've had arguments in the studio over the decades of long efforts I've made with film, making different documentaries on the topic, is I'd say, look, the topic is already so sensational. If you talk about something potentially from another world visiting our planet, what's more exciting and more, extraordinary and explosive than that story? And if you could just add the element of credibility, treat it like a 60 minutes expose, you're going to have a very successful outcome. That's been my sort of mantra for decades. Obviously, I've learned over the years, and I've gotten sort of refined the process a bit more. And every time I finish a film, I'm always kind of disappointed. I think it could be better. It could be better. And I remember literally one of my partners, this guy Boris, when we'd finished Out of the Blue, which was my second UFO doc, and it just wasn't. You have this concept of how you see something materialize, and then ultimately you just. You look at it and you go, yeah, it's decent, but it's not what I envisioned. And I was pushing my team pretty hard. And I had my partner, Boris, we had a laugh about it a couple nights ago, in a fetal position, crying and pushing so hard. And, we were out of money, we were out of time. And his wife looked at me and she's like, enough already. You're killing my husband, and he's in this little ball on the floor, and we were really pushed hard. I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to just let this film go out into the world as it is now. But in the back of my mind, this is not, no, I got to make this better. So 3 years later, I owned the film again. I had to buy my two partners out because when I told them I wanted to go back to the drawing board without a booth, they thought I was crazy, but you have a certain vision of how you want to see something, play out. And I was just like disappointed, quite honestly, every time. And with the phenomenon, although I haven't watched it in its entirety since I finished it, because I've got PTSD from the whole experience. I don't know, I keep wanting to do it, but I just don't find the right time where I can actually do it without worrying about having like flashbacks of what it took to put that thing out there. But I think I'm pretty satisfied with it.
You should be proud of it. I just watched it again last night in preparation here for this. And it just, again, struck me as to, you could see the development of your documentaries that you've done here. And I can see elements of the first ones in this, and you could see how it could grow from it. I mean, I know that there's only so much that you're able to present, of course. I have a good friend who's a Hollywood producer and director, and he did one a couple of years ago that it was a crazy French director on it, and she shot over 100 hours and had to boil it down to, an hour and 15 minutes. And
that's
you leave
easy.
98.
I shot thousands of hours.
You leave a lot on the floor, and there's an awful lot. So to be able to come out with what you do is amazing. And just to get to the point of all the people that you dealt with in putting this together, and what the progenitors were for, just outside of your own. I know this is something that Francisco and I were talking about here, how the development of films and who comes in and who provides you with that inspiration. So Francisco, why don't you present your insight into that?
Hi, James. A small question regarding the past. What inspired you? How deep of an inspiration was the Disclosure Project and Stephen Greer, in the sense that, in 2007, what you organized with Leslie Kean was more sort of a replica from the 2001, and that was like the introduction to the release of the documentary Out of the Blue, which also, I believe, has some clips from the Disclosure Project. Can you tell us more about it, and what led you to reach to Leslie Kean to produce that event in 2007?
So it's funny, I'll see something happen, and then I got to just get there, right? And I was inspired by Dr. Greer. We have a different approach with things, and there's a lot of mudslinging going on in the UFO community. Greer and I have always been nice and kind and friendly to one another, and there were aspects of what he did I thought were amazing. And I thought, I woke up, it was 2007, and it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had a dream the night before. I saw the whole thing play out, and I think I had $500 to my name at the time, and I got on the phone, and I called the National Press Club. And at the time, I was living with my sister, and she was renting a little cabin in a house together, and I called the National Press Club and I booked the ballroom, and it was like thousands of dollars, but they said, but you could put a credit card to hold it. And then, so I got my credit card out and I said, I'd like to reserve this ballroom on this date. And my sister was in the other room, and I hang the phone up. She goes, did you just book the ballroom for something? I said, yeah. She goes, you don't have any, what are you doing? You don't have any money? You can't do that. I said, well, I'm doing it. So then I called Leslie, and I said, hey, Leslie, how you doing? Good, what's going on? I said, well, I just booked the ballroom, and we're going to do an event at the National Press Club. Do you want to join me? We'll do it together. She goes, well, hold on a second. I need to think about that. You know, we need to talk about, I mean, we need to go over this and map it all. I said, Leslie, I'm doing it. Are you in or you out? And we're, you know, to think about, you know, we're not going to reflect on whether we're going to do it or not do it or how we're doing this. Are you in or you out? And she said, oh, hell with it, I'm in. and that's how it started. And I remember this, I had gotten, I broke that story with Governor Fife Symington, the former Arizona governor who did that press stunt after the Phoenix Lights case, where he had one of his aides dressed up in an alien suit and kind of made fun of the whole thing. I'm sure you guys remember it well.
Yeah.
That really ticked me off. I'd spent a lot of time in Arizona and, you know, covering that case and interviewing the witnesses and TikTok, well, his constituents and witnesses and all. And anyway, and so I had approached him for an interview, and to my amazement, he said yes. And then, of course, he admitted having seen the thing and yada, yada, yada. Well, so I'd gotten a lot of press coverage at the time. And my two other partners were exhausted with the Out of the Blue, which I was revamping. I was going to revamp Out of the Blue and re-release it. And they just thought I was nuts. And so because of all the attention I'd gotten in the media, I got new investors on board, and I bought their interest out for about 100,000 more than what I sold it. So I sold, I think it was like 50% of the film, or maybe it was 45% of these two partners got new investment on. So now I had 100 grand to play with, right? And so, and new partners. And that's how I put the event on at the National Press Club. Like, it was just a miracle, the whole thing. And then I was totally penniless again. I had all these debts happening. Everything was twice as expensive as I ever expected as these things happen. And I get a phone call from a guy just out of the blue, completely random. He says, I love what you're doing, man. And let me send you a check for 25 grand. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. You have no idea how important that is. I was literally just going, how am I going to possibly pay for this? Because I didn't have any like rich family or anything. My dad and my mom died living in a trailer on food stamps. And my dad was paralyzed with the neck down with MS. He never had any money. So I was like always hustling on my own. And, so it's just miracle things like that would happen, you know, and it just kind of gathers momentum and develops a sort of a life of its own. And it's amazing to see the support that happens once you embark on a journey like that. You just have to trust the process and trust that you're going to figure it out. And that's one thing I've learned. I mean, I never had any money with any film I've ever started. Nothing, no, zero. But you know, you get the momentum going, and people are like, "Hey, all right, you're doing it, man. Yeah, we want to help," you know, and you know, and off you go. You know, I mean, I ran out of money 15 times with the phenomenon, and even when I got good investors with that had, you know, money, I still had to. Like, it wasn't like they're just writing blank checks. I mean, you still had to like, well, I thought you already had enough money to do this. Well, I thought I did, but it's actually going to cost more. You know, it's like, well, okay, well, how many more times are you going to keep asking me that? You know, and it's just like, oh, anyway, you know, and then we did the National Press Club event, which was, I was having a meltdown at the time. I mean, I was terrified of so many things that could go wrong. And we pulled it off. And then I was like, well, I got to make a movie about it. And everyone was like, you can't make a movie on a bunch of retired white guys at a podium at the National Press Club. It's going to put everybody to sleep. I said, well, hell, Al Gore just made a movie out of a PowerPoint presentation, so why not? And so that was the birth of I Know What I Saw. And it sort of rolled in from.
And you went twice to have a talk with Larry King, right?
Yeah, that
on
whole
CNN.
Thing, that was tremendously helpful because it gave us a spotlight and made us appear relevant, and so people. That's at the end of the day, those kinds of things matter. You know, it's like if you're the flavor of the week, people want to get next to you or support you or whatever. So that was really helpful. And you have to keep that momentum going, right? As much as you don't want to keep the push. Even when I finished, I revamped Out of the Blue, then I did the National Press Club event, and then I made the movie out of the National Press Club event. I know what I saw, and I remember I had people call me up at the end. It's like, all right, man, what's your next project? It's like, I'm exhausted. Like, can I just like relax for a second here? And I did take a much needed, and I made another film on the BP oil spill called Pretty Slick. And I took a much needed break, but quite honestly, it wasn't the best career move for me. I could have kept the momentum going, and which is kind of what's happening now with the phenomenon. I'm getting all these offers of things to do, and I'm just trying to strategize. And as much as I want to just kick back and enjoy the fruits of my hard labor and the people that we all work so hard, I realize that you kind of have to strike while the iron's hot.
Right. In keeping with that, our international flavor, thanks, Francesco, for your questions. When
Sorry, did I answer it?
Indeed.
Yeah, I went off way on a tangent.
That's okay. That's the way this thing works. That's the way it works. I want to bring in from the UK, Lee Nicholson. Lee, I know you are eager to ask or present James with a few insights.
Sorry, just unmute the mic there. Hi, James.
Hi.
So there's been a lot of talk recently in the community for the last 2 or 3 years at least about a threat coming from the phenomenon, or a potential threat. I wondered what you thought about
that. I'm not of the camp that even the language of threat to me is not where I in all my years and all my interviews, and I just, quite honestly, I base it on the interviews that I've personally done in the different countries around the world, other than us taking a hostile position towards them and them sort of reacting to it. I don't see them as a threat. Now, I don't have the military background that some people would say, hey, anything that's whizzing around with impunity in our airspace, particularly over sensitive nuclear weapons facilities, they have to, I guess, because that's how they're wired, to interpret that as a potential threat, obviously. So, but me personally, I'm not saying I'm right, but me personally, I don't see them as a threat. And I'm sure I'd get criticized for saying that, but that's just my own personal experience.
Well, I mean, I don't think any of us really know the answer to that anyway, do we? Just yet.
Yeah, no, of course not. No. And look, that's not addressing the potential of people claiming to be, abducted. If that whole aspect of the phenomenon is real, and it probably is, that's threatening. Going against your will, that would be awful. But overall, I feel like, hey, if they were here to do us damage, believe me, with their observed technology, I don't think it would be very difficult for them.
No, absolutely. So another question that.
Go ahead, Lee.
Sorry, I was just going to say another question that came up was, have you had any personal experiences, and did this potentially affect your decision to make these documentaries?
That's really funny you asked me that question, because I was literally yesterday talking with a friend of mine, and I said, I feel like it kind of discredits me a little bit if I do talk about my experience, because it might seem like I'm biased. But I'll share something with you that I haven't shared with anyone else yet publicly. I had a sighting with a girlfriend of mine. Now that I've talked about in the past, years ago. I was 20 years old, and we were in bed together. I remember I had dated this girl in first year in college, and she's like, oh yeah, my previous boyfriend was really into UFOs. And I said, God, that guy's a freak. It was like, that fast. I didn't ask one more question. That guy's a freak. Done. And then growing up, we had a family friend who was quite prominent English. His family started Yardley's soaps. Anyway, he used to, at dinner periodically, and he was a very credible guy. He's a pilot, and he would talk about this UFO encounter that he had. And I was just tuned right out. This guy's a freak. you know, and just no interest. Well, when I was 20, I had an experience with a friend of mine, Lisa Reinhardt. And we watched this thing out the bedroom window that was a orb, probably, I would say half the size of a Volkswagen Bug, the older ones, not that big, but it was close to the point where you weren't squinting, but you were almost, I mean, it was right there. I mean, we could have probably hit it with a rock.
Really?
She looks at me and she says, "What the bleep is that?" And I said, "I don't know what that thing is, but whatever it is, I get the feeling it knows we're looking at it." She says, "I feel exactly the same thing. Close the blinds." So I jumped out of bed and in my haste, I ripped the blinds right off the wall. I mean, they hit the floor. I'm in my underwear. I'm fumbling around trying to, and this light is coming through the glass and I'm trying to put the blinds back up. Anyway, we clutch each other for a couple of minutes. I don't know, a couple of minutes. And she says, "I wonder if it's still there." And it wasn't. Well, my sister came home that night, late from a concert in San Francisco. We lived an hour north of San Francisco in the country. And she's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing up?" I was like, and we told her what happened. And she goes, "Huh, cool, you know. Anyway, good night," you know, and off she went. And the next morning, we never spoke of it ever again. Never told my dad. You'd think we'd have woken up the next morning and told everybody about it. Well, anyway, about 2 weeks ago, 30 years later, I get a text from Lisa Reinhardt, my friend. And she says, "James, do you think that thing we saw has any influence on you as to why you're doing what you do today?" And I said, "Lisa, that's a good question. I can't say no, but I don't know. But it is kind of funny, right?" And she goes, "I think about that." I was like, "Well, I don't know, Lisa. I don't know." So to answer your question, yes, I have had a sighting. And the weird part was, it wasn't like, you know, so unambiguous, like, "Oh, that's a flying saucer and it's sitting on the ground." It wasn't like that. It was more nebulous. I mean, it was a light, and it was kind of almost throbbing a little bit, but it was stationary right out my bedroom window. And the weird thing is, I probably would have just dismissed it as something else, but the telepathic connection, that was what was weird, that we both felt that. You know, it was like, it's weird when you look at something and you know that it knows you're looking at it. That was the weird part about the sighting for me and for her. Yeah.
I think it's really important to understand that, James, because there's somebody in the military, a former military person. I know him well. You probably all know him, Robert Salas, Captain Robert Salas. He was
Love the guy.
Just an incredible individual. He witnessed that whole incident at Malmstrom in the late 60s and wrote a book on it and did a couple of things at the Washington Press Club with Robert Hastings. But a while back, being a military person, he was probably reluctant to do it, but he has admitted to his own experiences. And sometimes that kind of thing, I guess it makes you say to yourself, well, what the heck, I'm going to go forward anyways. I don't care what people think about it. I need to tell the truth about what has happened to me. And it's sort of a two-pronged issue with him being an experiencer and also being in the military. And that to me is a real kind of indication that these things are getting to us in many, many different ways. You had a sighting, you know, Robert has had an incident, and then he has admitted his experiences. So it comes to us in many, many different ways. So I'd like to bring in Giorgio. I know you've got a few comments and questions that you want to send James's way.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this interview, James. I'm Giorgio Piacenza from Lima, Peru. I recently heard in an important interview you made that credible sources had provided you with a statement that aliens are walking among us, and that's going to move the ball forward. If we knew more about it, please expand as much as you can on that statement.
Okay, so that
anything.
Yeah, thank you for the question. That got taken out of context,
Okay.
but it is true that and it's a very slippery slope. Even me talking about it, you know, could be I met with an individual who is definitely in a position to have some pretty credible information on this topic. Let's put it that way. There's no question about it. And that is what he said to me. Now, do I believe him? I have to say, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But he was telling me this off the record, not like, hey, I want to go on camera and say, aliens are walking among us, because absolutely no way in hell he would ever do that. But he did say that to me, and I couldn't dismiss it because of who he is. Let's put it that way. Do I believe it? I have to say, I need extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, but I cannot dismiss it based on who he is and his position.
Can you throw us a bone here? Is he military? Is he intelligence? Anything?
He works with all the above, and I met with him at his home. So
Okay.
it was like it was his mouth to my ears. That's what he told me.
Okay.
And if, like I said, if it come from anybody, but I made a comment on one interview, and I probably shouldn't have done it, because people are like, James says that aliens are walking among us. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. But people are putting those words in my mouth, and I did not say that. But I did say that I met with someone who I deem to be a credible source of information. I cannot dismiss it because of who he is, and it's what he told me. And and I understand why he's not saying that publicly either, because you have to have extraordinary proof to make those claims publicly, right? But it was something to think about, that's for sure.
Yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't mean to deliver a flat message on that one, but
yeah, we in the UFO community, we need to develop more nuance. I think that, like you said, people misinterpret statements out of context occasionally, and we need to grow up and develop more nuance in our critical thinking skills. So, but thank you. That's an important statement still, very important. James, the second question I have is that after you producing 3 great UFO documentaries that fundamentally establish that the UFO phenomenon is real, do you intend to move forward now, perhaps moving into contact experiencer territory, or perhaps international UFO research, or perhaps even assisting the Pentagon to come out with more evidence? What is your next move?
I can't really talk about my next move right now, but I will say that there are some extremely exciting things brewing behind the scenes that I have to pinch myself to think, how could I possibly be in this room? But I am. And I really have to leave it there. But I'd love to just tell you guys, but I just can't right now. But I will say that as much as I want to kick back and relax and just take a little time off, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually nose to the grindstone again, and pitching and collaborating and joining forces. And I think that it's potentially extremely exciting. It's the biggest thing times 100 million that I've ever done before. It's kind of a moonshot, but I'm all in, man. What can I say?
Well, you got to strike while the iron is hot,
Why not,
Yeah. I mean, it's you're on a roll here, and the phenomenon is indeed a phenomenon, if I may say that. And there is something, and this is where an area that Chrissy is very interested in is how these discussions and or how these presentations can help to shape the future somewhat. Chrissy, your thoughts and questions on that?
For sure. James, you're working with an amazing group of people. Darren Ferreira is one of them. Amazing producer, produced Ready Player One with Spielberg. That's a pretty great name to be attached to. So when you're working with this group of people, first I'll ask you 2-part questions. Do you think that you're shaping mainstream culture? And if so, how are you shaping it, and what direction are you going towards? And then the next question is, working with these people, how do they, and all different people from Leslie Kane to researchers to you name it around the world, how are they shaping the film that you're doing and the knowledge that you're getting? And does it play a factor in how you interpret any other event or anything that's happened?
Well, I'm humbled by the whole experience, quite honestly. And I don't look at myself as shaping anything. All I'm doing is picking up a camera and documenting what's going on, right? And giving witnesses a platform, a credible platform. And it seems to have organically snowballed, right? And but I don't see, I really don't. I really don't see myself as anyone special. I'm Joe Public, and I just happen to seemingly, with the help of so many others, just create a credible platform that people can all work together and participate on. And that's it. That's how I see my role. I'm learning, every day I learn more stuff about the phenomenon, and every day I feel like I know less. The more I learn, the less I know. People are like, well, what's going on? It's like, oh boy, I wish I could tell you. I don't know. I don't know. There's so many. It's like the more you learn, the more you realize you just don't know. So
are you going towards a certain area or direction? Do you have a direction in mind?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell us what that is.
Yeah, I want to see further government transparency around the world. And I want to continue to provide a platform that government, military, credible witnesses are comfortable participating in, and a trusted platform that says, hey, we're not Looney Tune fringe stuff here. This is a serious and sober look into what could turn out to be one of the most exciting discoveries of all time. And you're okay to come and work with us, because we're not going to have silly green smoke and make any outlandish claims and have little discs flying between your ears. So, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, really.
No, it makes total sense. I have my one last question too. It's more about the film, because I'm immensely intrigued when it comes to the aerial school event. I think it's unbelievable.
I know.
Cynthia Hine, which and a group of people do, used to be former UFO researcher and used to write for the AFRI News, the UFO AFRI News. So she talked about culture and how she felt that culture played a way that people would interpret, like the experiencers interpreted their experience. When you interviewed the adults, from kids that turned into adults that had contact with whatever it may be, being, with the UFO, with whatever it was, do you feel that culture played a role in that? And if so, how did it? Because there were so many different cultures at that school. It was an affluent school. So you had a whole bunch of different types of people. What did you see as an adult as adults talking about it?
Let me talk about that case in particular, because I first heard about that case back in the 90s, in 97, when I was making my first UFO doc, 50 Years of Denial, which I sold to Discovery Channel. And, I say that because I was in the middle of making a documentary about UFOs. And when I heard about that case, while I was making a documentary on UFOs, I didn't even look into it.
Wow.
Because I just said, there's no way in hell a sighting of that magnitude in broad daylight with that many witnesses could occur and the whole world not know about it. So I just wrote it off completely. I was terrified featuring that case, because I was dealing with so high-level government and military officials in this film. I was terrified they were going to run for the hills when they realized that for the first time ever in any movie I've ever made, I'm dealing with alleged close encounters of the third kind. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. Like, I'm working with these, come on, let's just be honest. It's like, you have claims of, all these children in Africa of all different race and ethnicity, and all saying, a lot of not all of them had telepathic communication, but the ones with certain proximity to the beings did, that multiple UFOs land just on the outskirts of a playground in broad daylight on morning recess. The occupants get out of the craft and interact telepathically with a group of school children in broad daylight. I mean, boy, I was really worried that they're going to say, hey, take my name off this thing, get me out of here. I don't want anything to do with that. I was. And I was worried about it for 5 years, maybe longer. And because I knew the reaction that I had when I heard about it. And I was already making a doc on UFOs. So I knew that I didn't believe it when I first found out. My gosh, what was like Senator Harry Reid, who hadn't signed off on the movie, going to say? He had to watch the movie, get it signed off.
Fair.
So all those high-level people needed to see the movie before they're going to sign a release form. And guess what? That film wasn't going to see the light of day if I didn't have E&O insurance, air and emissions insurance. In order to have that, everyone's got to sign off. So I'm glad you mentioned that case. And I had a hell of a time with that case because nobody believed it until you'd say, look, just please suspend judgment, sit down and listen to the testimony of these children. And then listen to them as adults. Just listen and suspend judgment, please. And if you can get people to do that, because I'm not trying to like scream from the hilltops, join my cult of believers, but that was a really challenging case to use. And it was really scary that, I was banking on the fact that these people were going to sign off. And I was acutely aware of how I had to deal with that incident, and I have questions too when I'm doing it. I'm thinking to myself, why did they land at the school? Why did they choose the children? I'm finding out that UFO or multiple UFOs flew in and around the area of South Africa for several days, witnessed by adults all over the airport. Why did it choose the school to land, and why did it choose the children to make contact with? Well, I can look back at multiple interviews that I've done with military guys, some Peruvian, Chilean, guy from Tehran, Iran, Parviz Jafari, that I personally have met these people. I've personally interviewed them and talked about shooting at the UFOs or trying to shoot at the UFOs. Well, we have a fairly hostile posture when it comes to anything that's unidentified in our airspace. So maybe that's a benign environment for them to make contact. You tell me, but it makes sense to me. I mean, when I interviewed Edgar Mitchell, I loved that man. I asked him questions like that. How come they don't just land overtly? Come on, you're a space guy. He said, James, and again, this is all speculation, right? But he said, James, think about it. Think about if you traveled to another planet that had life. Would you just like land and overt contact? Or would you sit back and observe quietly and discreetly? And are they hostile? Are you going to be met with bullets? Or, he goes, that would be the sensible thing to do, right? So I'm just, again, this is all total speculation, but it's speculation based on interviews I've had and just observations that I've had. I mean, without going on too much of a tangent, I remember in the edit room with another editor guy, Lance Mungia, and he came up with a brilliant idea. And I worked with lots of different people on this film, Took a Village. He said, hey, James, one day, we're dealing with all this archival material that I got at a lot of it at David Marler's archive in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And wonderful stuff, wonderful 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all these amazing sightings and news headlines and newspaper headlines. And he goes, James, God, to make sense of it all, we should get a map and we should put little pin dots on the map in the edit room. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. And we did. We went to look at things in Texas and things in here and all these different locations. And we were like putting these pins in. And I went, isn't that like right? Were they the 1945 detonation of the atomic bomb at Trinity site? Yeah. Well, isn't that interesting? So this other, Socorro is right near White Sands, but it's also a stone's throw from the Trinity site. Huh. Why is all the, and organically piecing this together in the interim, was like, well, wait a minute here. It really seems like they're interested in our nuclear activity, right? Is it taking matches out of the hands of baby? I don't know. But then you've got, when I met with Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, and he drops that bomb on me saying, one of the more astonishing aspects of the phenomenon is that they're flying over these, not only penetrating very sensitive weapons, nuclear weapons storage areas, but also disabling in some instances our weapons, Well, I mean, boy, certainly, let's see, okay, disabling our weapons, let's see, landing at schools, making contact with children. I mean, look, I don't know, but you start to kind of get a picture of maybe some of their intent. Maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like it's for sure one of the most like intriguing stories that I think I've ever
right?
come across. Your contact, yeah. And I'm really happy that you shared it in the movie.
Oh, thank you. Well, so many things happened during production. I mean, I started this film when I was 43 and I'm 52 now. So that was a long journey. And I remember we were 4.5 years into the film when the front page of the New York Times broke the story of ATIP, right? Then we're going through all that, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute, we need to cover this aspect of this nuclear component. And who's better to do that than Robert Hastings? Robert Hastings gives us, makes all of his stuff, thank you, Robert, by the way, makes all of his research and film footage all available to us. I think I paid for a fence for him in exchange. And that added another year of production, but that was such a, wow, moment for me too. This is a journey for me as well, this whole thing, to see. I mean, you'd heard about stuff. You remember the Atlas rocket at Vandenberg Air Force Base and the things flying around from Jacobson, and you'd hear about these things. But when you have that testimony of those high-level military officials, boom, 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 back to back like that, it's just really, really makes an impression.
It really does. And you look at that, the different people that, Harry Reid's given you feedback regarding, obviously, he's at that point in time, he's an active senator, and he's running the ATIP program with Lou Elizondo, overseeing it, and he is going to have a concern from a defense posture, a safety and intelligence posture for all of us. And as you said, their importance of what they're looking at and paying attention to. And by they, of course, I mean the visitors, the phenomenon, who are here with us. Francisco, we were talking about that, and I know you've got a question set up for James here on this that would apply directly to this.
Well, my question regarding the phenomenon, which is an excellent documentary. What was it like to work with Jacques Vallee? In the sense that you, as a very friendly person that goes well with everyone, you coming from the disclosure movement, sort of, and knowing Jacques Vallee as a scholar, a very has maybe a negative view of all these movements and ufology, etc. How was it able to work with him, and did he in any way, do you in any way feel that he may have changed his views from over the years for the phenomena and the ufologists, etc.?
Lee Spiegel really made the introduction with Jacques, and Jacques, is God to me. I mean, it's like, just being in the same room with the guy, I was just so intimidated by his brilliance. And I didn't want to just say anything. I just wanted to listen to what he, and it was such a privilege and an honor. I literally would be pinching myself, And honestly, I think at the end of the day, he was going to just get involved maybe as a consultant, and then maybe after a while it was like, well, maybe I'll comment on this one aspect of maybe. And then it was like, well, we eventually got him out to our edit studio, and I had actually bought Lonnie Zamora's truck, and I met Jacques downtown with the Lonnie Zamora's truck, and Lonnie in that case was really dear to Jacques. He had a whole, he was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio in April of 1964 with Dr. Hynek. And he was telling Dr. Hynek, hey, look, you got to look at these cases that are explained away as psychological, because those are close encounters, of the third kind of thing. And we've had this wave in France in the 50s, yada, yada, yada. And he was telling Hynek this stuff. And then literally a day or two later, the Socorro incident happens, and it's sort of the case that changed everything, right? And so when we lured Jacques into this studio, and I had to kind of prep him ahead of time and say, look, just so you know, we don't have any bathrooms, and there's no running water, and there's no internet, and it's the end of a dirt road, and it's kind of funky, but it's kind of a temporary situation, you can get him in there. And he saw that I'd spent 5 years on just the Socorro case alone, not every single day, but over a 5-year span, to getting to know the family and the wife and the daughter and the kid and coworkers and the community. And I interviewed the whole, half the town, a lot of people that didn't make it in the movie. I think he almost felt like a sense of obligation to, for the first time, put that case, the pieces of the puzzle together in a way that hadn't been done before, and the things that really truly mattered. And I honestly think it was a sense of obligation. Jacques would come in the studio at these marathon edit sessions, and he would sit at the back and he would say, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. No speculation. I doesn't care about anyone. Oh, I heard this. No, I want to hear from the witness, and I want to see the documents, and I want to see the evidence. And so Jacques he wasn't as emotionally tied to any of the content, because he didn't have to go and do all those interviews. He didn't know what it took, which is it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful position to be in, because it makes it easy for him to kill my darlings, right? In the edit room, just cut and slash, cut and burn. And I found that he has a wonderful sense of humor. So intelligent that I just, I can't even, and I don't even pretend to, but he's approachable, and he's grounded and funny, and never made me feel like, a lesser person. And I can never compete on his, obviously, ever, intellectually, ever. But that didn't matter. We were two human beings with a common goal. And to see him, the amount of time he dedicated, and we're actually friends now. We had lunch together on the mountain the other day. I gave him a T-shirt, and we had a lovely, lovely lunch together, and we're in touch. We
basically, your work spoke in your behalf.
Yes, exactly.
Basically,
that's exactly it. And he obviously, made the film better. And not only that, and again, I have Lee Spiegel to thank for that introduction. And he brought in, we were waiting for this to happen, but he brought in Christopher Mellon. Christopher Mellon said to me, when Jacques says jump, I say how high. And so that was Jacques' idea. And Jacques met with Christopher Mellon in Paris and said, this guy, James Fox, is doing this film. I'm working on it with him. You need to be in this movie. And Chris said, okay, you need me to be in there. And we had to negotiate for several months with A&E at the time, because he was doing that History Channel thing. And that was a pain in the ass. And they kept saying, what exactly are you doing? You're doing is a series? What is it? I was like, we're doing the seminal, feature documentary. It's going to be in theater, and okay, it's not going to be on television. Or anyway, so that took time. And of course, once Christopher Mellon joined in, that opened up more doors. So it just kept kind of expanding. And I was told that because of my fierce independence, I am fiercely independent. I do the few times where I foolishly have participated with TV shows, and I understood that there was a certain level of dumbing things down for a younger audience, but I play into that a little bit. I've learned my lesson. Thank you very much, and accepted responsibility. But the few times where I've relinquished control, I've regretted it, seriously regretted it. And I was told by, just about everyone in there, you're the first director that sent me a cut of the film with me in it for review to make sure it was done accurately and that we were satisfied. And we will work with you again in the future because you're the only person that's ever does that. And so I pride myself on that. I produce independent content. I oversee the whole process, and that I personally will share it with the participant. And if you're not happy with anything that I've done, then let's make it better and let's fix it. And I think that speaks volumes in the industry, and that
makes a difference.
It makes a difference. Yeah, and it got out there, and that's another thing. Moving forward with me now is I've decided that I'm not going to compromise that. And even though I've got all these massive potential deals with executives knocking on my door right now, I'm telling them all no, because I'm going to maintain my independence. I've worked so hard to get to where I'm at. I'm not going to compromise that ever again.
It's all about building relationships, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
It's all about building relationships.
Building relationships, and if you can raise the capital independently, it's not easy. It's always a challenge. And even, when you've got a successful film out there, it's still like people want to see a proper proposal. They want to see the budget, and they want to see the numbers, the sale. It's not just like, hey, here's a check, rock and roll. I wish, but I have decided that I'm not going to compromise that aspect. And I hope I didn't give you the super long-winded answer to your question, but working with Jacques was just an absolute and honor, privilege.
Yeah, and somebody like Jacques, I think it's very important, and you touched upon it, is the three elements that he was looking for. And you're dealing with a scientist. He is first and foremost a scientist.
Yes.
He has an intense interest in the subject matter for multiple reasons. He's got incredible contacts within we'll call it the industry, but he is so well respected because of the scientific approach that he takes to it, which lends an incredible degree of credibility to the subject matter when it's treated that seriously. And he will research and catalog and go where the facts lead him and pull the emotion, strip away, as you mentioned earlier, some of the fog and smoke effects that and the voice that had been there in the past. No, let's look at it very seriously and treat the subject matter with the respect and the seriousness that is due it, because it might be, just as you said earlier as well, one of the most important subject matters that we've ever faced as a race, as humanity in our history, is where did we come from and how did we get here and where are we going? And through them, it allows us to look at those questions and move forward with it. Have one more question here for you from Giorgio about the contacts and the people that you've had, and both military and government. Giorgio.
Oh, thank you. James, I have worked for many years with contactees that sometimes are asked by their extraterrestrial connections to invite reporters and cameramen to witness ET craft interactions. For example, this happened with Grant Cameron. This happened in 1989 with Univision, the network, and with Paola Harris. And they all saw things. They all saw, and this could be filmed. Would you want to come to film these craft interactions if it happens again, if they want a reporter like you, a filmmaker like you, to witness this and film it? Would you come? Perhaps in Latin America, I don't know.
So one of the things that I've learned over the years is to never jump to any judgment. I have learned time and time again that every single time I have poo-pooed something just because it didn't fit within my understanding of the phenomenon, not to quickly dismiss claims or events, because 99.9% of the time, I've proved to be wrong. I proved to realize that, I have to suspend judgment and at least review the evidence or a case. So based on that statement, yes, I would. Of course I would do something like that. Yeah, I mean, I would, why not, right? What do I have to lose?
That's the right attitude.
Yeah.
It would probably move the ball forward another bit. And like I said, it has happened. It was verified. It was suppressed back in 1989 when Univision came back to the US and Telemundo. They were told basically not to show much of this. But it's happened again with Paola Harris, Grant Cameron, and others, and they were not suppressed. So maybe whoever is controlling this is allowing it. Whoever is controlling within the government this release, gradual release, is allowing it. It would be a great opportunity. Thank you.
Yes, no, guys, I want to thank you guys for having me on. I don't know, Chrissy, you were very tenacious, and I think that's a wonderful characteristic.
Thank you. I tried.
Yeah. Good. He's like, hey, well, and I do appreciate the support tremendously. And I would like to say one final thing, if I may. People often say, well, what can I do to help? Well, such a simple task as what was tremendously helpful in terms of how much time it takes to do and what happens in return. Taking a moment and just rating the film online, believe it or not, is tremendously helpful, because the executives look at those things. They check the ratings. It corresponds with algorithms, and it could, catapult it into another level where it gets more promoted. It really does have a exponential effect, and it's extremely helpful. And I ask people to rate it, and if even if they don't like it, take a moment and rate it. But that's really helpful. And if you want to watch the movie, or if you want to rent the movie, obviously look for it for the cheapest location. But if you decide that you want to buy the movie, I say this because it's really helpful. If you get it from iTunes or Vimeo for the same price, you get 3 hours of bonus material. People go, my God, why didn't you tell me that? I was like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that all the other platforms that I provided this 3 hours of bonus content don't put it up. So iTunes and Vimeo, for the same price, gives you 3 hours of bonus material. So if you are going to buy it, get it from iTunes or Vimeo.
Oh, I wish I knew that yesterday.
I know. I'm sorry. I know. I try to tell people that, because I didn't realize when I threw in all that extra content for no extra cost that not all platforms offered it.
Mm-hmm. We are just about at the top of the hour here, and James, I thank you very much. But I have a caveat. You teased us earlier in the interview about the hot stuff that might be coming up. And I have a feeling that it might relate, I could be wrong, it might be related to the movement by Rubio and Warner with their Authorization Act for 2020-21 and the insertion of the UAP section in that act, and having the National Director of Intelligence report back to that select committee in the Senate. Now, Warner apparently is now the chairperson of that committee. I want to hold you to coming back, and possibly when the time is right and things have kind of gone around the block a few times about this issue within Washington. I'd love to have you back on. I know we all would, for you to comment on the fact that this could be leading up to specific reporting by military people, much of which is in the film, to a Senate committee about this issue, and that would be a first. So I want to hold you to possibly coming back and addressing that issue maybe later on in the year. So
I'll be happy
thanks
to.
very much for.
Yeah.
Okay, great, for sure.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. I appreciate all that each and every one of you do. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you for joining us on this broadcast here. And please be sure to subscribe if you are not already subscribed to the New Frontier Network channel. Be sure you hit that like button, whether or not you liked it. We appreciate the like anyway, because some of us are very sensitive and we need that constant positive promotion in our lives. So once again, we enjoyed having you here. It was wonderful to share some time with James Fox. And as Victor said, we will have him back again in the future. So for now, take care, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
You've been listening to the New Frontier Network.